The information on this podcast is my opinion and some internet research.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
Welcome to Star Wars Chatter, hosted by Andrew Van Zark. Now you're listening with power. Alright, hello, and welcome to the Star Wars Chatter. I'm Andrew Van Zark, and this is your safe space which goes Star Wars, music, video games, and other geeky topics, So if you're listening on AMP, you'll be able to chat with me and interact with me, but if you're listening on Spotify or on any other places that I put it, like Apple Podcast, you're just going to have to listen and enjoy as much as possible. But on AMP, you can interact, and we can listen to some awesome music. But for the most part, we're just going to review and talk about the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 3, or better said, Chapter 19. I'm really excited for this one. This one's called The Convert. This is when we get to see the actual cult, and Din Djarin gets back to being the Mandalorian, as we all know him. So Chapter 19 of The Mandalorian The Convert takes us to one of the most beloved locations in Star Wars, while also setting up what's next for Din and Bo-Katan. So my show has a little bit of my thoughts and some readings from any article that I find, and this one is from the Dean of Geeks, just so you know, Dean of Geek. There's going to be a lot of spoilers if you haven't seen the episode, so make sure to get yourself situated with the things and be able to, get yourself started by watching the episode and then coming back to listen to the show. So, The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, or Chapter 9, has what's become increasingly clear about The Mandalorian Season 3 is that it feels deliberately paced and plotted, with much of these early chapters being devoted to set up for bigger, more miraculous moments, and rebuild down the line. Is this a good thing or a bad thing is what we might be all asking ourselves, So it's possible to tell at this point if all these moving plot pieces will ultimately assemble in a satisfying way. But so far, and I could say the story is developing nicely. I do like how they're doing things. It does have a little bit of a weirdness to it, and some stuff you need to really pay attention to understand what's happening, like the Mythosaurus scene and whatnot. Those things you gotta really sit down and understand what's going on The Mandalorian as far, because they're really putting you right there, and you really gotta remember what was happening in Season 2 and Season 1 to be like really entwined and entangle in with the information that all of this has to give us. So the thing is that it's doing things in a satisfying way, and it's giving us more space to breathe, and their intriguing characters are being introduced in a better way, and we're understanding each one more in depth, So this episode, aptly titled The Convert, picks up right where the minds of the Mandalore left off. With Din Djarin coming to a moment after Bo-Katan Christ rescued him from the depths of the living waters, where she witnessed with her own eyes the majesty of a living, breathing Mythosaurus. So, curiously, she doesn't share her sightings with Din, which which speaks to her rocky relationship with the Creed and her personality-defining denouncements of the old ways. Still, it's clear her faith in her own beliefs has been somewhat shaken after this experience, as we'll say later in the episode, So, there has been many things happening in this episode. At some point, I did feel like it was kind of sort of fillerish, but then I was like, no, this is not. This is building us a new characters, building us new things, because we have the story of L-52, and L-52 was set up, and he got backstabbed by one of the characters, So the dynamic and rapport between Bo-Katan and Din has consistently been one of the best aspects of the show, and watching them spiral around each other and their respective ideologies doesn't feel like it will get old anytime soon, Bo-Katan clearly states, I don't believe in any of the traditionalism that the Mandalorians tend to have. And then Din Djarin says, but no, we do need to have that traditionalism in order to continue the traditions of the Mandalorians, to keep the Mandalorians alive. And that's a thing that, contradicts Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. Even though they are really good together, they have developed themselves into a nice duo, if I might say so myself, even though Bo-Katan doesn't want to do anything with Din Djarin at this point in time. But she always gets intertwined with Din Djarin at some point, at some shape or form, and we can't deny that. We can't see that any other way, and that's how things are flowing at this point in time in the show. So, the fact that we see neither's faces this episode speaks to how uniquely talented Katy Skanovs and Pedro Pascal are. Many actors would be impaired by the armor, but these two seem to have found the power in it. So the aerial dogfight with Din's Naboo starfighter and Bo-Katan's gauntlet taking on the squadron of TIE interceptors was chef's kiss. Mwah! In my opinion, as an aerial fight scene, it's got everything you want. A crackling sense of speed, thrilling mid-air maneuvers, huge explosions, and what makes Star Wars so great in this particular area is that each spacecraft has its own personality to it. From the way the gauntlet ship flips and the wings to drift and get the drop on the interceptors, to the Model N1's nimbleness and breakneck speed, to the iconic, almost animalistic screech of the TIEs. This scene was nerdy as hell, to say the least, and a glorious so. One of my favorite things of Star Wars is extremely the space battles, for sure. Seeing the big spacecraft, the motherships and the TIE fighters, the X-Wings, the Y-Wings, everyone. I love seeing everyone doing their thing and getting their stuff, fought right there in space. So, but the thing is that even more into that, as the Mandalorian does so well, the aerial display isn't just in there for show, as it ended with TIE bombers laying waste to Bo-Katan's home. There's a pull in the episode's final act for her to return to the religion she was baptized into as a child. And again, however, inadvertently, as an adult, she and Din are accepted back in the tribe, but she's keeping the Mythosaurus size a secret, close to her chest for now. It leaves a lingering question for us to discuss in the upcoming weeks, So, will Bo-Katan use the tribe's invitation to further her own plans to rule Mandalore, or is she starting to actually believe in the way after her encounter with the Mythosaurus? That's a big question that we all have to be, asking ourselves. She doesn't take off her helmet after witnessing the Mythosaurus after all. That's one of the ways you can be in the way. This aspect of the narrative is developing nicely, properly, the story forward in a way that's more character driven and personal, which encounter balances all of the actions and world building perfectly, So, and speaking of world building, we have to tell and talk about the touristic element of the show. It is an impressive, now it's as it has ever been. Spending time on Coruscant with Dr. Penn, Pershing, Omid Aptari, the actor, and Elia Kane, with the actress Katie M. O'Brien. It's interesting on several levels, and at this point, I thought it was a little bit of like a filler thing. I was like, what are we talking about Dr. Penn at this point, But then I understood that they're building up a new character and they're giving us more information on L52, aka Dr. Penn. So, one nuanced benefits of this side story is the visuals. The mostly nocturnal Coruscant serves as an appealing contrast to the diurnal dogfight we just watched on Kalevala. But, truthfully, it's just freaking great to explore the streets of Coruscant from the ground level and spend time in one of those most beloved locales in the entire Star Wars universe. We get to see Coruscant a lot in the prequels, and seeing this right now, it's really nice. And usually we see Coruscant from the perspective of the spacecraft, but this time we're seeing it on a human, on the ground level. So following Dr. Pershing, he navigates the New Republic's amnesty program and gets close to Elia Kane, and it's compelling at times. Although a few of the dialogue-driven scenes sort of fall flat due to some uninspiring writing and uneven performances, hence why I thought it was a filler. So the ideas in play here are worthwhile, though Elia and Perishing, or better said, G68 and L52, respectively, connecting over their refusal to the cogs in whatever opposite proverbial machine they have ensnared by giving their stories a bit of a thematic heft. And Elia's deception at the end is a nice twist that points to some dark days, So ahead for Perishing and perhaps a reintroduction of Moff Gideon, because G68 was part of Moff Gideon, who is clearly pulling the strings, especially after it's hinted he's already escaped captivity, So one of the best things about this episode is it might bring us to a question: are we going to see Moff Gideon later on the show, And another thing that's really interesting about the episode is that it's Parachute and Ella's mission to get equipment from the junked Star Destroyer is the train scene, which has, of course, been done countless of times before, but it's welcome here, and in that, it adds a bit of tension and danger to what had been a bit of a drag to that point. Aptai is a great performer, but the office work Malai's scene in the interactions with Elia and other New Republic converts mostly come off as stilted and forgettable, So the train is a creaky Imperial cruiser scene are like breathing of fresh air, So also the physical sets of the Star Destroyer interiors are just sublime, to say the least. So in a time when seemingly every scene in every Disney production is shot on some kind of sound stage wrapped in digital implemented scenery, tactile sets like these make all the difference. Overall, it feels like The Mandalorian took a page from Andor from this Coruscant section. In a good way, Don't get me wrong, in a good way. I know many people are like in the fence with Andor, but I do think that Andor is great, and taking ideas from Andor, which Andor tends to be as much as possible as physical and on set and practical as they could. We have the chance to acknowledge this also in The Mandalorian with this episode. So there are so many things to look forward as the season of The Mandalorian continues. And how long will Bo-Katan hold on to her secret? That's a good question that we could be asking ourselves. And what role will Perishing and his expertise in cloning play in the grand scheme of things, Palpatine, perhaps? I don't know. Will we get to see the epic IG-11 return? Will deserve, So when we will see Gorian Shard and his gaggle of pirates again? We will see Din ride a mud-scuffing Mythosaurus? So, what will Grogu's first words be? Brick by brick, the foundation is being laid for something huge to go down in the season's later half. And so far, the building has been a joy in and of itself. Welcome to the show, Kiraitone. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I love that you're here, and this is all so good. So, we've been talking about the new episode of The Mandalorian and everything that has to do with it, and I do think that there's a lot of awesome things to be said. I don't really know what we're going to head on with Dr. Pan Perishing and Elia Crane. Those are really interesting characters. He's like talking to like droids that are like psychologists and whatnot, or they're trying to get him some information of if he feels okay within his amnesty program, and those things are things that I'm questioning myself. What's all this L52 and G68 gonna do? Are we gonna see Moff Gideon later on in the show? I have a really big hunch that we're gonna see Moff Gideon pretty damn soon, and I really would enjoy that a lot, because Moff Gideon was a really cool concept of a character, and I don't think we're done with Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon took hostage of Grogu at some point, and he had a hold of the Darksaber. Now the Mandalorian has the hold of the Darksaber, and that is something that I'm really interested, to say the least, and I really hope that they get to take us to that point in time within the show, you know? So the question also can be, what will Grogu's first words be? I've been asking that question to myself too, because when he is talking to Apelli, he actually tries to say a word, and Pelly says, "Oh, look, he said a few words. Did he say my name?" And those things are like really interesting. It's gonna be really adorable and really cute, and like, oh my god, like when we get to see Grogu speak for the first time, because all we've had so far is baby noises. And it's weird because he's like 50. Yeah, he's 50 years old. So when does a someone from the Yoda species is considered an adult? And it's considered a young adult, a teenager, or an Asian, an old man, an old woman. When will these things come to play? I don't know if Grogu has been growing up since then, but I have a feeling he hasn't. He's still more or less the same age. And that's our things that we can acknowledge. I give this a really okay rating, maybe like I would say a 4 out of 5, I think. So Kiraito says here that if it doesn't say my name, I don't want it. Oh, so you really want Grogu to say your name? So he's gonna be like, Kiraito, and you'll be like, ah, he said my name. That would be pretty adorable if you ask me. Kiraito, if you ask me, that's a awesome thing to keep in mind. So, it's interesting how nowadays we can tell that from this episode on, Bo-Katan has changed in so many ways, in so many shapes and forms. Bo-Katan has been one of my most intricate and most lovable Mandalorian so far. We get to meet her in the Clone Wars, if I'm not mistaken. I do have that Clone Wars a little bit mixed up because Clone Wars is the longest show that Star Wars has. It's really difficult to see that in one sitting. So I do think that Bo-Katan has changed in so many shapes and forms. If you see the latest episode, you notice that accidentally, by saving Din Djarin from the living waters, we get to see Bo-Katan actually getting drenched and bathed in the living waters. So the thing is she now part of the clan of the Death Watch, the Children of the Death Watch? I have a feeling that from this point on, we are gonna have a brand new Bo-Katan. She's gonna change her ways, and then she's gonna be part of it. Even though if you see the episode, you can kind of tell that Bo-Katan is not 100% satisfied. She's like a little sad that she's now part of the Children of the Death Watch. And I really don't know where this is gonna take us. I have a feeling that she's just using the moment to go into other places. She does want to rule Mandalore. She does want to be the ruler of the Mandalorians. But I don't know if that's gonna be the case, or if Din Djarin's gonna be the one that's gonna take the role of being the leader. I hope Din Djarin's the one. If Bo-Katan becomes the leader, this could be a little bit of a mess, a little bit of a convoluted mess, in my opinion. I don't think that we should let Bo-Katan lead, even though she does have the will and the power to do so. She was the daughter. She was the daughter of the ruler of her city in Mandalore. So why would I be against it? I am against it because she's against traditionalism, and in some places, in some things, I think traditionalism should be kept as is. If a Mandalorian cannot take off his helmet, then do so. You cannot take off your helmet. Sure, some traditions can be a little bit stupid on some shape or form, but in this case, it makes a lot of sense to have that traditionalism. It's like when you become a Taekwondo fighter. If you become a Taekwondo fighter, you have some set of traditionalisms that you have to do in order to continue what you have to do. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I think we should keep in mind, you know. So a few characters not named Skywalkers or Kenobi or Organa have suffered as much tragically in Star Wars as Bo-Katan Kryze. So born in the royal house of Mandalore, joining the wrong side of a bloody civil war that claimed the life of her sister, and then losing her homeworld and most of her people when the Empire glassed the planet in the Night of Thousand Tears, Bo-Katan has known loss for most of her life. While much of this plays out in the Clone Wars animated series, Bo-Katan's bad luck streak continues on The Mandalorian. So when we learned from Season 2 of the live-action series that Kari Skatovs, aka Bo-Katan, is on a mission to reclaim the Darksaber from Moff Gideon and the Empire. Once she defeats Gideon and becomes the rightful wielder of the legendary blade, Bo-Katan will be able to use it to unite all the Mandalorian clans under her banner and retake Mandalore. But that's not what ends up happening. Instead, it's Din Djarin who disarms Gideon in Season 2's finale and unknowingly wins the Darksaber, suddenly putting him first in line for the title of Mandalore, the warrior leader of the Mandalorian people. So, since the weapon can only be won in combat, this immediately puts Din at odds with Bo-Katan, of course. Din wants nothing to do with it and tries to offer Bo-Katan the blade, but she refuses. And in the Season 3, we do see Bo-Katan use it at some point. So it simply doesn't work that way, and she herself learned years ago. You see, Bo-Katan used to carry the Darksaber and rule the Mandalorians before the original trilogy, but her claim to the weapon was technically illegitimate, since she was offered the blade and didn't fight anyone for it. It's a long story, just go with it. Don't take me to explain the whole story. It will take too much, and we only have enough time for this episode on the Star Wars Chatter podcast. So we learn in the Book of Boba Fett that some in Din's own tribe of Mandalorians, religious extremists, actually blame the downfall of Mandalore on Bo-Katan's decisions to accept the blade instead of following ancient warrior traditions. As I've told you, Bo-Katan does not believe in the traditions of the Mandalorian. So when The Mandalorian Season 3 kicked off, the stage team set off for a big confrontation between Din and Bo-Katan. Surely the Mandalorian warrior wouldn't just let the Darksaber go that easily, right? So when Din finally pays a visit to Bo-Katan in Season 3, he greeted by someone who's given up fighting. A sour Bo-Katan informs Din on the other members of her clan have abandoned her, and gone off to work as bounty hunters after she failed to rescue and secure the Darksaber. She says she's no longer interested in retaking Mandalore and would rather just sit alone in her throne room and sulk. Bo-Katan doesn't even take this opportunity to challenge Din for the weapon. So why bother, Why bother? I really don't know why should we bother with all this stuff, So the last bit may come as surprise for fans of the Clone Wars who've watched Bo-Katan wage war against countless of Mandalorians, including her own pacifist sister, Duchess Satin Kryze, countless of times, and then Obi-Wan was in love with her and she dies out of all this stuff, and it's one of those things, it's really sad when you see Satin die. I didn't like when Satin died. That made me so sad, and it was the only person that Obi-Wan actually fell in love with, and that would have been a nice relationship if we would have kept it going for a little bit longer. But Star Wars, they like to build up a relationship to then kill it off as quick as possible. It is what it is, So when Bo-Katan declares war on Duchess Satin Kryze, it was to get her ways. She never had any issues fighting her fellow warriors before. What makes Din so different here? So, in the second episode of Season 3, The Mines of Mandalore, Bo-Katan even briefly wields the Darksaber again to save Din from a biomechanical cyborg spider thing, but doesn't try to lay claim to the weapon then either. So she really seems over it. This is very different side of Bo-Katan than even where we left off in The Mandalorian Season 2. So, quoting here, we have to go back to see why she's doing what she's doing, Sakov told Deadline this week when she asked about Bo-Katan's decisions to give up her quest for the ancient weapon. Quoting again, this is a person who has fought against her own people. She fought forever, and she realizes that doesn't work. You can't continue to fight among yourselves. I think with Din, I don't know if it'll go as far as to say that she respects and trusts him, but she doesn't not. But she does not. If he didn't have the Darksaber, he'd done nothing that would make him her enemy. She's not going to fight someone who she doesn't have a reason to fight. So Sakov suggests that Bo-Katan feels that she tried everything in her disposal to accomplish her goals, even fighting her own family in a civil war on Mandalore, but that it's all ultimately been for nothing. Every single possibility, every place that she's at right now, every direction she's done before didn't work before. That's what she's trying to figure out, So of course, fate and destiny are very hard to shake when it comes to Star Wars universe and the galaxy far, far away. And just as an episode after she declines to join Din's pilgrimage to the Mandalorian homeworld, she thrust back into his story anyways when Grogu comes knocking in the mines of Mandalore. And by the end of the episode, her faith in what she believes to be true, that the old warrior ways and rituals Archer's Mandalorian Hawkum, has been absolutely shaken by the very real and alive Mythosaurus she encounters in the living waters of Mandalore. Now that she has a sense that Din believes aren't entirely nonsense, will this inspire Bo-Katan to get her clan and throne back? Well, that's easier said than done, according to Sakov, So quoting here again, if you go by the timeline that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are acting on, in that it's been a few years, she has had time to lose all her people, Sakov explained. So they're not following her anymore, which means she's not a leader without the Darksaber, but she doesn't know how to go about getting the Darksaber in such a way that's going to result in her not losing her people. She says that they abandoned her as soon as she returned without the Darksaber. I think these people are who thought Bo would do anything to lead, that Bo would fight anyone to lead, and that's what she wanted, and that's why they're following her in the first place, So when they saw something in her that they didn't respect, they left. She lost her people, her home, she lost her family, she lost everything, So what's next for Bo-Katan? It's unclear at the end of the Mines of Mandalore and on the Convert episode. And as she sits shell-shocked, staring at how the living waters, and when she's with the clan, and now she's part of the Children of the Death Watch, it's all part of what is to come for Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan for me is the character right now at this point in time in Star Wars that is growing, it's expanding. And we're gonna find out so many things about Bo-Katan that we probably didn't know. We've seen her grow since the Clone Wars, and now in the Mandalorian, the Mandoverse. So why not expect to see her grow some more at this point in time? She might go into different directions and different places. But anyways, thank you for listening to the Star Wars Chatter. I'm Andrew Sark, and this is your safe space with Star Wars, music, geeky topics, video games, and manga. So I'll catch you on the flip side. Adios, amigos, and may the Force be with you.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
This was Star Wars Chatter, your safe space with Star Wars, music, video games, and other geeky topics. Listen on AMP, the Amazon Radio app, and get yourself started by listening to my music on every major music platform under Andrew Van Zark. But if you want to have more information, go to my website, www.andrewvanzart.com, where you can find all my social medias, music, and everything else all in one page. trust in the Force, no light speeding, and buckle up. Now, you're listening with power. Power to the music, and may the Force be with you.